Twin attacks in Iran's capital. The most serious case of terrorism in Tehran in decades. Gunmen stormed the parliament building while it was in session. The attack lasted several hours, with people desperately escaping out of windows. Another attack happened just 30 kilometers away, at the mausoleum of the Islamic Republic's founder, Ayatollah Khomeini. Iranian officials say they foiled a third attack. Daesh claimed responsibility in what is its first assault inside Iran and carried out by Iranian nationals. Iran's supreme leader tried to downplay the incidents.
اینا هم در اراده مردم هیچ تأثیری نخواهد گذاشت. این رو بدانن همه و اینا کوچکتر از اون هستن که بتوانن در اراده ملت ایران و مسئولین کشور اثری بگذارن.
But these attacks have raised concern about cracks in Iranian security, with questions over how these attackers were so easily able to hit such sensitive and symbolic targets. The attack could bring into question Iran's support for Bashar al-Assad in Syria's war, viewed by some Iranians as a fight with few benefits, costing too many Iranian lives, and now potentially bringing conflict back home. These attacks come days after the region was engulfed in unprecedented tension. Earlier this week, 8 countries and Libya's eastern-based government severed diplomatic ties with Qatar, accusing it of supporting terrorism and of trying to destabilise the region, something Qatar denies. Qatar's GCC allies also accused it of supporting Iran. This followed US President Donald Trump's meeting with GCC leaders in Riyadh last month, where Iran was aggressively criticised for what they said is state funding of terrorism. But the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has pointed the finger at Saudi Arabia, saying it's supporting the terrorist network that carried out these attacks, and it has questioned the timing.
رئیس جمهور آمریکا در یک نظام قبیله‌ای عقب مانده منحط محض میسته در کنار رئیس قبیله رقص شمشیر میکند اون وقت 40 میلیون رأی ملت ایران در یک انتخابات آزاد ایراد میگیره.
In a statement, Trump said he prayed for the victims of the Tehran attacks, but added that states that sponsor terrorism risk falling victim to the evil they promote. The Iranian foreign minister responded, tweeting repugnant White House statement in Senate sanctions as Iranians counter terror backed by US clients. Iranian people reject such US claims of friendship. How will this attack on Iranian soil impact developments far beyond its borders? And with the chaos gripping the region, will this end up driving Tehran and Doha closer together? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to further discuss the attack on Iran and its implications, I'm joined here in the studio by TRT World's editor-at-large, Ahmed Al-Burai. From Washington, D.C., Ali Alfoni. He is a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council. And from Tehran, Fouad Izzadi. He is a lecturer at the University of Tehran. Thanks all so much for joining us. Let me begin with Fouad then. You are there. Help us understand, if you can, why Iranian Daesh extremists would perpetuate this attack now in Iran against fellow Iranians. What are their ultimate goals in the country?
Well, as you know, the mentality of Wahhabis is they don't have any problem killing citizens of their own countries or even their neighbors or even their family members. The Wahhabi mentality allows people to kill without much justification. So the fact that these people are killing citizens of Iran is not a surprise. They have been doing this in Syria and Iraq and other places for many years now. And in fact, Iran has been immune for many years. This is the first terrorist attack we have had in Tehran in more than 30 years. They have engaged in some terrorist activities in towns and villages near the border, but nothing in Tehran. And why they do this? Because they're Wahhabis, because they are following the teachings that come from the Saudi Arabia, and these teachings tell its followers to kill innocent Muslims without any problem.
Okay, Ali, I'd like to know your thoughts on that. Are these Wahhabists that are taking direction from Saudi Arabia, or are these Daesh extremists that have a particular agenda in Iran?
For some time, we have seen Daesh produce Persian language propaganda videos trying to target the Sunni community within Iran. 9% of Iran's population is Sunni. They are not only belonging to a religious sectarian minority, but they also belong to ethnic minorities. It is the Kurds in Iran, Arabs, Baluchis, and Turkmens. And Daesh has tried to mobilize them through Persian language propaganda videos. And most unfortunately, some of the propaganda resonates with the Iranian Sunni community. They live in areas distant from Tehran, periphery areas. They suffer from poverty, underdevelopment, and some of them end up answering the call of Daesh, and this is very, very unfortunate. The way to solve this issue from Iranian perspective is not only by having security measures, because security does not solve all the problems. What is needed in Iran's Sunni areas is development, is creating job opportunities so that Iran's Sunni community remains Iranian and does not answer the call of a terrorist organization like Daesh.
And you bring up an interesting point, though, and I'm going to raise this now with Ahmed in the studio. The fact that this could happen, that these fringe elements, if I can call them that, were present in Iran and somehow overlooked by a very serious security apparatus that exists in Iran. How were they able to get through security in this country?
Based on the information we have in hand, we could have three different case scenarios for the operation that happened in Tehran. One of them is what the other two guests are speaking about, that it's the Iranian version of Daesh that has done it, and I believe the clear message was to drive a wedge between the two main powers, the Sunni and the Shia powers, the Saudi Arabia and Iran, that may trigger more fiery statements between both of them that may lead to a real military confrontation between the two powers. And that is because already Daesh has been pushed back in Iraq and is going to be defeated in Raqqa. So the only way is to create this kind of chaos in the whole region after they're defeated in these two strongholds. That's from the one hand. That's why they did it in Tehran. And that's the first time, as the other two guests said, in 30 years. On the other hand, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, who accused the Saudi Arabia of supporting this and of backing the rebels or the revolutionary Arabs or Sunnis inside Iran in order to create this state of chaos in the whole country, in order to push them back from Syria and Iraq. The third one is, though, it's an inside job. Based on some analysts, they say that this is basically to defeat or to make or to show the government, the newly elected president Rouhani, as weak enough. He's trying to disengage from Syria and Iran. This kind of operation is going to push him back. For the security point is, it is interesting when you just look at the scene of the operation. It was on the public sphere of the parliament. It wasn't on the deputy sphere where the main members of the parliament are there, which send clear messages to the Iranian people that have been spoken on the social media. It's mainly the main official representatives of the people who are being securely, tightly secured in the parliament, whereas the public sphere is not tightly secured, and that would built on the idea of the system, I mean the apparatus of the security in the region, how this had happened and how these elements have been able to infiltrate one of the most tightly secured places in Tehran.
Okay. Ali, I want to get your take on Iran's reaction then here, rightly or wrongly, pointing the finger directly at Saudi and its U.S. supporters. Do you fear this could escalate what is already a very serious diplomatic row between Iran and its Gulf neighbors and Qatar?
Iran is already engaged in a war by proxy with some of its neighbors in Syria, to a lesser degree in Afghanistan, and also in Yemen. And of course, such an incident could trigger and deteriorate relations between these countries. What I do hope all countries in the region learn from this experience is that supporting terrorist organizations is not in anyone's interest, because anyone can be the target of such attacks. Such an attack would be a disaster in Saudi Arabia. It would be a disaster in Iran. So it is not in the interest of states to support terrorist organizations. Sooner or later, they will end up themselves being targeted by those same organizations.
Still, though, if the support, so-called support, doesn't come in the form of specific terrorist attacks on national sovereign land, do you fear then it will manifest further in those proxy wars that you refer to specifically in Syria and Yemen?
What I do fear is further spread of those conflicts to new countries in the region. When you have such a long war being fought in Syria, to some degree also in Iraq, there is always the risk of further spread, and it is the responsibility of the large powers, big powers, regional powers, to solve those issues. Whenever such a war begins, it's very, very hard to stop it again.
Fuad, I want to get your take on what you've heard there. And some are saying as well that part of the fallout could be not just the intensifying of the proxy wars that are being fought in countries like Syria and Yemen, and for what Ali thinks could be engage even more countries. Some are saying that this will actually cause the Iranian-Russian alliance to become stronger in order to rebut the now what seems to be the Saudi-US alliance that's building against Qatar and Iran.
The Iranian-Russian alliance is already strong. I don't think we need to have terrorist incidents in Tehran for it to become stronger. Let me say that I strongly disagree with the views of your guest from Washington, trying to say the people that engage in terrorism are Sunnis is an insult to our Sunni population. Iranian Sunnis love their country as much as other segments of the population. In Washington, for many years, we have elements in Washington Institute for Near East Policy, which is a Zionist outlet that is trying to follow the policy of divide and conquer, pitting Shias against Sunnis, trying to justify terrorism by making arguments that have no validity. What we saw in Saudi Arabia was an alliance between the Wahhabi sect, represented by the Saudi clan, and the Trump administration and the US government. This alliance between Wahhabis and the American imperialists goes back for many decades. And instead of talking about this fact, the fact that the Saudi clan is in power because of the support that they get from Washington, we have Zionist elements in Washington that want to create a sectarian war of Shias and Sunnis and basically change the direction of the opinion that should be made. The Saudis are responsible for Wahhabi mentality, and Washington and President Trump and the US administration is responsible for supporting the Saudis in these adventures that they have, and they're just making money out of Saudis in terms of billions of dollars. So what we are seeing in reality is the form of resistance from both Shias and Sunnis against the US domination and against the domination of the countries that are in line with US foreign policy. As you know, Iran's foreign minister is in Turkey. Iran and Turkish relations have been generally good in the last many years, especially in economic terms. Turkish citizens are generally Sunnis and Iranians are Shias, and they have no problem working with each other.
Okay.
So trying to highlight some sort of difficulty that does not exist is not really good.
Okay. Ahmed, it seemed you heard some kernels of truth in what Fouad was saying with your nods there, unless you meant that to the opposite effect. Go ahead.
No, I do believe that what he's talking about is absolutely true. The point is there is no real religious war on the ground. What we're having now is more political, and that's exactly what Daesh is trying to do. Daesh is attacking some of the rebels who are mainly Sunni. They're attacking even, they have target groups. They're declaring some of the Sunni rebels in Syria as terrorists, as kafir, as infidels. So the point of creating this more sectarian animosity in the whole region is more an agenda that is going to take the whole region into more uncertainty, into more turmoil, and make it more turbulent as more than the way it is. That's a very valid point I agree with, and that's, if you just look at the messages you have from the terror attack that Daesh is doing, not only now in this region, but also all over the world, it's a clear message that terror is going to hit everywhere, regardless of the religion, regardless of any other considerations you may think of. That's why the whole world, whether they like it or not, they should sit together and find a political solution to what's going on here in this region. Otherwise, the backlash of Daesh is going to hit everywhere, as I told you.
Okay, then speaking of reaction, Ali, let me ask you what you made of Trump's reaction to this attack. There was a certain level of, can I call it sympathy, expressed before actually just saying, well, you kind of had it coming. How does that set the tone for relations going forward?
Well, the U.S. President's words and statements, I think, talk for themselves. I do not see any reason to further comment them. But to the honorable guest from Tehran, I must say that you are misrepresenting my viewpoints and maybe intentionally misunderstanding my viewpoints. If you do an objective analysis of each of the perpetrators, the terrorists of the attacks in Tehran, you would find out that they belong to the Sunni minority in Iran. What I was trying to explain is that the Iranian government, most unfortunately, has always used a policy of iron fist against any activity, Sunni political activity and insurgency in the periphery regions of Iran, rather than thinking of how to create jobs in those areas, how to promote a better life for those people living in Iran's periphery regions, so that they do not fall victim to the propaganda of a terrorist organization like Daesh. This is the point that I was trying to make.
Okay, Fouad, your response then?
Yes, what your guest in Washington said is very inaccurate. He is following the talking points that has caused a lot of difficulties in this part of the world, trying to have Shias and Sunnis fight so the Israeli government can have a good time. And you see Mr. Netanyahu is laughing very hard because the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia are making Iran an enemy instead of having Israel as an enemy. The Washington Institute is called the Likud think tank. They come up with these ideas and they produce inaccurate information.
Mr. Izzadi, forgive me.
Sunni
Mr. Izzadi, forgive me that I am
in Iranian Majlis. We have. Let me finish. I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Sir,
No. What you said is inaccurate. We have Iranian Sunni members in the Iranian parliament.
Unfortunately,
we have Iranian Sunni members in the Assembly of Experts.
Actually, we can't
what
hear
you're
either of you
propagating is Zionist propaganda designed to create mischief in this part of the world. And people are realizing what you are doing. So this type of propaganda you're engaging in is not really going to work out. And interrupting truth is not going to really work out. The Sunnis and Shias hate terrorism, and accusing the Sunni population of Iran in engaging in terrorism is a crime by itself.
Okay, Ali, I've got about 20 seconds for you to respond. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm not an affiliate of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. I work for the Atlantic Council. And I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you know what the unemployment rate is in Sistan and Baluchistan
You used to
region?
work there,
or in
and
Kurdistan,
you're doing the same thing
or
at
in
Atlantic
Turkmenistan?
Council. You're going through Zionist propaganda points, and this is not going to work out anymore. I'm sorry to tell you.
Sir, your approach is insulting. You are not engaging in a discussion. You are engaging in propaganda warfare.
Okay, Ahmed, quickly before we go, I'd just like to get your final thoughts on what you think actually lies ahead for the region, given the events of the last few days.
In theory, what the guest is speaking about is something very beautiful, very promising. But when it comes to practice, what Iran is doing, what the Saudi Arabia is doing is something completely different. As I told you, these two major rivals in the region, as far as they're dealing with each other as enemies, we're going to see more terrorist attacks in both countries. I don't believe that this kind of attacks are just going to be in Tehran or in Saudi Arabia. You're going to see different terrorist attacks in the whole region, as far as these two main bodies are not considered themselves as political rivals, rather they're enemies.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. I think we'd need an entire hour for both of you to hash out in Tehran, Ali Alfoni in Washington, and here in the studio, Ahmed Al-Barai. Thanks all three of you for joining us on the Newsmakers.